Hello everyone, my name is Nicole, and together with Jen and Hitomi, we are going to be talking about the culture and cuisine of Japan. So for the race and language of Japan, they are very similar. The race of the culture is 99% Japanese, and the other 1% consists of Chinese, Korean, Brazilian, and Filipino. 99% of the people living in Japan speak Japanese, and the other 1% speak Chinese and Korean. The two most common religions of Japan are Buddhism and Shintoism, and they complement each other. A lot of people living in Japan will say that they actually follow both religions, and the religions are more of a way of life than an actual religion. Followers of Shintoism believe in and worship kami, which is best translated as a spirit or a force of nature. And if kami is treated correctly, it will take part in life and bring success, good luck, and health. There is no founder and no god of Shintoism. It is more of a way of life. All living things are observed in the faith is an interesting quote that I found, which tells you that the consumption of meat and fish is not encouraged. Buddhists believe in karuna, which is compassion and karma, and they also believe in reincarnation and dharma. Dharma is best described as the truth, the natural order of things, and the teaching of the Buddha, who is Siddhartha Gautama. Most are lacto-ovo-vegetarians because they encourage against taking a life, and the cow is seen as sacred, so beef is avoided. But being a vegetarian depends on the religious sect that you belong in, the country that you live in, and your personal choice. The country of origin is very complex and hard to pinpoint, and it's very controversial as well. But there are 4 common theories that exist. The first theory is during the Ice Age. Land bridges that were connecting Japan and Asia brought humans over by foot all the way back in 20,000 BC. Japan evolved from horse-riding Asian nomads that passed through Korea to conquer Japan in the 4th century is another theory. The Japanese are relatives of immigrants from Korea that arrived in 400 BC due to rice paddy agriculture is another theory. And lastly, a mixture of the above theories is another theory in itself. So basically saying that some people came from the Ice Ages, some people came from Asia in the 4th century, and some people came from Korea due to rice paddy agriculture. Communication style in Japanese is very indirect. They are very harmonious, polite, and very warm society, but they believe in verbal communication not being as important as body language. The Japanese are very impassive speakers, and sometimes they can be seen as vague, their answers. They dislike to use the word no because they don't like to admit that they don't understand something or it will be hard for them to do something. So rather they would say something like, it would be difficult for me to do something. So if you were to counsel someone of this culture, a couple of do's and don'ts. Do not make constant eye contact because it can be seen as rude and even aggressive. So it's best to look at somebody's neck, or if it's a male, their necktie. Do not talk through silence because this is a time that the client can take in what you just said to them and relax. Do not frown if confused. It is seen as disagreement. So be very cautious when you're using facial expressions because they can be misinterpreted differently. Do not point at the client or speak loudly. Do bow out of respect because it is how the Japanese greet each other. And keep physical distance and avoid direct contact. Although the Japanese will accept a handshake because it is showing that the Japanese do respect other cultures. Right now I would like to show a video clip about the culture in Tokyo, Japan, and it has a couple of dining etiquette tips.
If you don't know the local etiquette, it can be easy to offend. In Tokyo, follow these simple rules. The basic concept of society, tatemae, is the face you present to the world, and it's important for a harmonious society. Your honne, your true feelings, are kept hidden. They can come across as quiet, reserved, and don't mind silence. But you have to remember, this is a very polite society, and you have to be very, very nice. Don't blow your nose in public. Don't point. Don't count your change. The Japanese pride themselves on their honesty. Don't eat in public. Good luck. The number 4, shi, is considered to be bad luck because it also means death. Bowing is the Japanese equivalent to the Western handshake. The degree of the bow depends on the formality. However, foreigners are not expected to bow unless they're lucky enough to meet the emperor. You will notice that shoes are not worn indoors, say at home, at ryokan, even at restaurants. But if in doubt, follow the locals. Drinking is important in Japanese society for building relationships. This may be the only time you'll see the Japanese get a bit rowdy. Drinking age is 20 years of age. Tipping is not expected, but service charge may be included in some restaurants. This is Yuko showing you my Tokyo.
I hope you enjoyed that video. Lastly, I would like to present an article that I found about the Japanese food guide, and it was founded in 2005 by the Food Guide Study Group, and it can be best compared to My Plate in the United States, and is called the Spinning Top. And the food guide is very easy to understand, it is attractive, it is very flexible with meeting goals, and it can be easily used by the food industry. The top basically provides how many serving sizes of nutrients you should have throughout the day, and it can be applied to anyone that is 6 years of age or older. So this is a picture of the spinning top, and on the side it shows you the servings of grains, vegetables, fish and meat, milk, and fruit that you should have throughout the day. And on top there is a man running, and that shows how physical activity is incorporated into the top, because the top will only balance with adequate physical activity. And right now I'd like to introduce Jen, who is going to talk about Japanese cuisine.
So I'm going to start by talking about the different staples and the different traditional food styles in Japan. A traditional basic Japanese meal would have usually would have 4 different elements. It would have steamed white rice, which is also called gohan. It would include miso soup. It would probably include some type of pickled vegetables, which is also known in Japan as sukimono. And then the Japanese normally have some kind of side dish to accompany the rice that may include meat or tofu, and these side dishes are called okazu. There are also many different traditional food styles in Japan. Probably the most popular that's spread to the US is sushi. Very briefly, sushi is raw seafood that is served over vinegar-moistened rice. And as I said before, it's really become a huge trend in the US. Other traditional food styles include shabu shabu, which is the Japanese hot pot. This is where very steaming hot, almost boiling broth is served, and thinly sliced meat and vegetables are dipped into the broth to fast cook it. There's also a traditional food style called sukiyaki, and that's where a hot skillet is actually positioned at the table, where diners can grill meat and vegetables right there at the table. And then lastly, the Japanese have a huge variety of sweets. They're traditionally called wagashi, and they often contain a red azuki bean paste. I want to speak a little bit to the overall health status of the Japanese. The Japanese are actually considered the most healthy society and culture in the world. The life expectancy in Japan overall is 5 years longer than in the US, 83 years in Japan as opposed to 78 years in the United States. Heart disease rates in Japan, in both men and women, are also much lower than in the US. And there's also a much lower incidence of certain types of cancer, including prostate and breast cancer in Japan as compared with the US. So because of this kind of outstanding health status, the Japanese have been studied quite a bit to kind of figure out and determine why they're living longer and why they're staying healthier. And their outstanding health is actually attributed in large part to their diet. The Japanese eat a lot of seafood, so they get a lot of omegas. They have a very low consumption of red meat, so they're not taking in a lot of cholesterol. And they also eat a lot of seaweed, so they have adequate iodine intake. And they also consume a lot of soy, which has isoflavones, which have been found to reduce cardiovascular disease. As far as health problems, probably the biggest health problem in Japan is it's not diet related, it's actually smoking. It's estimated that 1 in 10 deaths in Japan is due to smoking, so it's very, very prevalent in the country. But Japanese immigrants who have moved to the US definitely do have more problems than people living in Japan, and this is attributed to the shift in diet that happens when they come west. One study found that 10 years after arriving in the US, the breast cancer incidence of immigrants from Japan increased from 20 per 100,000 to 30 per 100,000. So you're having higher levels of cancer, and there have also found higher levels of cardiovascular disease. The other major problem facing immigrants coming from Japan is that they lose universal health care. Universal health care system is followed in Japan, which means everybody has access to health care. It's very affordable, and as a result, in Japan, people see doctors 4 times more often than people in the US. So immigrants coming to this country lose that universal health care and end up paying more and seeing a doctor less. So in addition to practicing Western medicine, traditional, kind of what we would consider traditional health practices, there are 2 main alternative medicine treatments that are widely used in Japan. I should go back and say that one of the major Japanese beliefs is that individual health is dependent on maintaining a harmonious and balanced relationship with the universe. And so these 2 different methods actually work and aim to restore balance and harmony in the body. The first is acupuncture, which is also called hari in Japan. The second is Q, or moxibustion. Japanese acupuncture is very different than Chinese and other types of acupuncture. It's a more delicate process using thinner needles with minimum skin penetration. Moxibustion actually utilizes the acupuncture points, but instead of actually inserting needles into the skin, moxibustion uses moxa punk, which is a plant, and actually lights the moxa punk and heats it over the acupuncture points. This moxa punk has a unique ability to warm the tissues of the skin and relieve pain when burnt above the area. So finally, I want to look at 2 different recent studies that focused on different components of the Japanese diet. The first was a 2011 review which examined the health benefits from the high seaweed consumption in the Japanese diet. Basically, the iodine that comes from seaweed is an essential element required for thyroid hormone synthesis. It's also believed to impart some of its antioxidants and anti-proliferative activity in preventing cardiovascular disease and cancer. And basically the review looked at a bunch of different literature and found that the Japanese intake of seaweed is higher than other cultures and other countries, and this could be leading to their decreased risk of cardiovascular disease and cancer. The second study, also done in 2011, examined the association between fish intake and type 2 diabetes. The study looked at around 23,000 men and 30,000 women, ages 45 to 75. And the study found that in men, fish intake was significantly associated with a decreased risk of diabetes, type 2 diabetes. Interestingly, however, in women, fish intake was not significantly associated with a decrease in type 2 diabetes. So definitely more research has to be done in this area, but there looks like, at least from men, that there is a positive association between increased fish consumption and a decreased risk for type 2 diabetes. And I'd like to actually introduce Hitomi now, who's going to be talking about the interview that she conducted with one family member and one friend.
I interviewed two Japanese females, and person one is 21 years old, and she has been in the United States for a year, and she's a Christian. Person two is 50 years old, and she lives in Japan, and she's Buddhist. Their primary language spoken at home is Japanese. They both eat 3 meals a day, and they both answered that white rice is the most important element to make a meal for them. Additionally, person 2 replied that miso soup and pickled vegetable are also important elements of her meal. They do not believe what they eat can cure sickness or make it worse, and there is no food to avoid to prevent sickness. On the other hand, to maintain health, they eat natto and brown rice. They consider about nutrient contents in these food rather than religious concepts. Similarly, to promote balanced eating, they consume more vegetable when they eat meat. Also, they use an eating method called sankakutabe, also called triangle eating. They eat food in triangular pattern, such as having a small portion of the main dish, moving to sip some soup, and then having a small bite of rice. This triangular routine is repeated until all the dishes are finished around the same time. This helps to obtain different nutrients from different food. And we all learn this triangle eating strategy in school when we are kids. While person 1 is Christian and person 2 is Buddhist, they both answer that there is no restriction of food by their religions. There are a variety of food available in Japan, such as grasshopper seasoned with soy sauce and sugar, lava, and soft lore, which is a tasty of fish. However, there may be a gap in acceptance of these food among two generations. 21 years old Japanese women would not consider these things as food, and she said she would never eat this food. Whereas 51 years old Japanese women said that she would eat most food with a few exceptions. These two Japanese women said there's no herbal therapies that they use for illness, but drinking a ginger tea with honey or eating rice porridge with a pickled plum can be used as traditional therapies for illness. Ginger keeps the body warm, which enhances the immunity of the body, and rice porridge is consumed when people are sick because it's easy to digest. Sushi and Buddhist cuisine called Shojin ryori are recognized as healthy meals in Japan by two generations. These foods are prepared differently, but both food don't use contain animal products. Additionally, person 1 could only answer to this question regarding to discomfort with the medical care in the United States. She experienced no discomfort with the medical care when she visited the emergency room at the hospital. The medical staff were polite and professional. By interviewing two generations, we found that the concepts of healthy meals among these two generations are the same. The healthy meals consist of fish and vegetable, and they don't contain any animal products. However, acceptance towards certain unique foods such as insects, whale meat, and soft lore may have been decreased in the younger generation. And this is a reference, and thank you for watching this video.